Hi there from Chicago. Big Ten Today is fueled by Gatorade. Mike Hall and Anthony Herron. It is October 1st, which means officially I'm allowing my wife to put up Halloween decorations, to which she replied, I already put them up a week ago.
That feels a little early to me still.
It does. It's very early.
I'm just a homeowner. I'm new to this thing. But yeah, Halloween decorations aren't going up for probably like 30 days in my house.
You're going to put them up the day before Halloween.
Approximately, yeah.
Boy,
Give or take an hour.
You and my wife would not get along very well. Not unlike you and me. Let's check out Ross Dellinger from Yahoo Sports joining us. Ross, what's the date? When can you put up Halloween decorations?
I think October 1 is fair, a month out. But I saw Halloween stuff in the store like mid-August.
Right.
That seems crazy.
It's a little bit excessive.
There's like Valentine's Day stuff in the stores at this point. Anyways, none of that is our big story, although it could be. Instead, our big story on today is the football world of this conference. 7 squads from the Big Ten are ranked, including 4 of them in the top 10. And sometimes it includes names that you're not necessarily accustomed to seeing ranked. Like this week, there are the Indiana Hoosiers and Illinois Fighting Illini.
That's right.
Both of those squads are ranked in the AP Top 25 for football. Pretty impressive stuff all across the conference. By the way, do want to remind you there's a triple header of games coming your way on the Big Ten Network this Saturday. You got Purdue and Wisconsin. You then have those ranked Indiana Hoosiers with Northwestern in our afternoon game. By the way, tailgate will be at Northwestern at their Lakefront Stadium. And USC and Minnesota, another ranked team will go on. That's in prime time later on this evening. So let's dive into those teams. I want you guys to explain to me all the 7 squads that are ranked. What exactly makes them dangerous at this current date and time? Ross, let's start with you and the Buckeyes.
Well, I mean, the easy answer here, guys, right, is they're just really talented, right? They're probably the most talented roster in college athletics and one of the more talented football rosters that we've seen in college athletics when you go through the years. But I'm going to focus on one guy, Jeremiah Smith, right? He's been pretty incredible. 2 one-handed catches Saturday, just more evidence of his talent. I think he's got 19 catches this season, over 350 yards, 5 touchdowns. The guy's averaging nearly 100 yards a game, and he's a true freshman, right? He's 18. It's really remarkable. So that is the danger for him. But if you want to branch out, everybody's a danger, Anthony, on Ohio State's team.
Could not agree more. I mean, the Buckeyes, their roster is just littered with dangerous talent all over them.
We think of their offense, and Jeremiah Smith is so incredible. Remember, the defense has given up 3 touchdowns total on the year. Smith has 5 himself. It's a roster that's going to be in the top 5. It certainly seems like it all year long. Oregon is another team that has a ton of talent on their roster. Where are they dangerous right now?
I love the way that Oregon is already proving themselves as an excellent football team. You know, both lines of scrimmage could stand to improve a bit, but we're starting to see that improvement. We're starting to see what development can mean for a football team. And so Oregon already playing at a very high level with a quarterback that's right in the thick of the Heisman Trophy conversation, with talent all over the field surrounding Dillon Gabriel. But I would say amongst the excellent teams, the teams that truly seem great in college football, Oregon is the squad that's furthest away from their ceiling right now. We're seeing where the defense is beginning to grow, especially that front 7 week in and week out. We're looking at a Ducks offensive line that's beginning to play at a higher and higher level week in and week out. And we're seeing an Oregon squad on the whole that's just becoming more explosive, more combustible. So with the precision that Dillon Gabriel is executing quarterback with right now, and also knowing that they're beginning to access the vertical pass and the big play at a higher level, I just want to still continue to see more from that defensive front 7, and I believe we're seeing that. The ingredients are certainly there from a personnel perspective. So out of any team in roughly the top 10 to 12 in college football, there's not a one who's further away from what I see as their ceiling than the Oregon Ducks. That makes them remarkably dangerous.
Right. 2 very close wins to open up this season is a large part of why you're saying that. But in terms of dangerous, you're right. Gabriel, 81% completion. Yeah. 4 out of every 5 passes he's completing right now when he drops back to throw. Let's turn to the Penn State Nittany Lions. What's most dangerous about them, Ross?
Well, we talked a lot about Penn State's new offense, right? Under Andy Kotelnicki and quarterback Drew Aller, all of those things. But we haven't maybe talked enough about the run game. And we saw that burst out against Illinois. But we also saw what I think makes Penn State the most dangerous is defensively. Abdul Carter for Penn State, you saw at the end there, he had a strip sack fumble to basically ice the game. 13 tackles for loss the Nittany Lions had overall against Illinois. They changed coordinators over the offseason. Obviously, Manny Diaz went to Duke to be head coach, and they replaced him with Tom Allen. And not a lot's changed, right? Penn State is still really good defensively. I think through 4 games, they're 4th in the country in total defense. They're giving up just like something like 230 yards a game. It's pretty wild right now for them. So that, to me, defensively, Abdul Carter makes them a dangerous team, and they just hog the ball, and that's what they did. Against Illinois, they were able to establish the run and play good defense. And as they say, Anthony, defense wins championships.
I'm glad they say it too. I mean, I know I'm an old defensive lineman, but I think that makes all the sense in the world, especially when you think about playing football in the Big Ten, get through that first month. These last couple of months, you're going to have to play defense at a high level.
Penn State gets through that first month very well. If they win on Saturday, they'll be 5-0 for the 4th consecutive year. Off to great undefeated starts. Now, Michigan was undefeated to end their season last year, being the national champions. They are ranked this year. There have been some highs, there have been some lows. But when you've seen highs, what is the most dangerous part about that Michigan team?
What I love about what we've seen from Michigan the last couple of weeks, even in a win and a loss, we're seeing a version of Michigan now that's starting to look like the Wolverines that won the last 3 Big Ten championships, that led themselves to a national championship last year. And a huge part of the reason why is not just the execution in very intricate or specific manners, it's that they're starting to look the part of the predator more than the prey. They're taking the field with an attack mentality. They're playing bully ball on each line of scrimmage. They got one of the most productive running backs in the country over the last 3 weeks in Khalil Mullings, and they've got a defensive front with who might be the best player in America, Mason Graham. He's got Kenneth Grant, who's just a notch behind him with the production they get on the interior of the defensive line. When they get healthy off the edge, they can rush the quarterback, they can set the edge, they can stuff the run along that defensive front. And that Michigan front 7, when they can just suffocate opponents in the way that they do and make it so difficult for them to move the football, then they can pin their ears back. Then you get into 3rd and longs. You earn the right to rush the quarterback. So we're seeing bully ball back in Ann Arbor. Yes, there is growth that needs to take place, but with Mullings running the football, you get the combustible element of Donovan Edwards that's still available to them with his big playability also, and the growth that's there. Yes, it's slow. Yes, it's nuanced, but Alex Orji as a quarterback throwing the football at a higher level seemingly week by week, and his running ability. I do believe there's going to be a version of the Michigan run game that will showcase more creativity with how they utilize Alex Orji, the more opportunities he gets behind center.
What's interesting is maybe we haven't seen the ceiling, to use your word from earlier, for Michigan's run game.
Right.
Because Donovan Edwards could be a top 10 running back nationally, talent-wise. They have a quarterback who runs, and then you add Mullings, like you said, 3 straight 100-yard rushing games for him. That does make Michigan pretty dangerous. Let's head out west, Ross, for our next team, the Trojans of USC. What scares you about them?
Well, just the passing game, right? The explosive nature of their ability with Miller Moss at quarterback and that group of receivers to strike at any time. Years past, we've heard a lot about the explosive nature of Alabama. You see some of the programs that Alabama's built previously, back under Nick Saban and maybe now, and how explosive and they can strike so quickly. And we've just seen at least a little bit of that in this USC team. Miller Moss and his receivers, I mean, they've done enough to prove that they can move the ball quickly. The problem is the inconsistency there. USC was down, I think, 11 and then up 10 points in a 15-minute span against Wisconsin. So they proved they can do it quickly. We saw that in LSU. We saw in the second half against LSU, the second half against Michigan, them score quickly. The problem is in the first half of those games, they kind of stalled out. And against Wisconsin, too, this past Saturday, we saw an offense that kind of stalled out. But one thing they did prove this past Saturday, they don't only need Zachariah Branch, right? They got a 105-yard outing from Jacoby Lane and a touchdown catch from Deuce Robinson. So they've got a lot of weapons. So I think what makes USC really dangerous is their ability to strike quickly with the passing game, score quickly with Miller Moss and all of his kind of electric weapons today. The problem is they got to do that a little more consistently.
And you get a chance to see if Moss can do that in their game primetime Saturday evening here on the Big Ten Network. But he does lead the Big Ten, 299 passing yards per game. Now, all those teams we just talked about were supposed to be ranked. We're used to them. We've been talking about them since the beginning of August. But how about the two that were not necessarily supposed to be here? What's dangerous about the Indiana Hoosiers?
The precision they execute everything with while also being remarkably aggressive. That's a difficult thing to combine. When you have that aggression schematically on each end of the football, then quite frequently it can lead to turnovers on offense because you're trying to attack, find ways for chunk plays and get into the end zone. Or perhaps when you scheme up aggression on defense, whether it's stunts up front or man coverage on the back end. Yes, you want to make the opponent uncomfortable with your aggression. That frequently leads to big plays for your opponent. But they're sort of combining both those elements, the aggression with precision, and in the very first year, in the first few months of the time Curt Cignetti has been there in Bloomington, he's already been able to put a roster together that combines those elements at a level that we really rarely see in college football. And it's not that they have overwhelming talent. They certainly do have capabilities. I like their defensive front seven. They run to the football. They hunt together on that end of the field. And offensively, there are very few quarterbacks in the Big Ten Conference that are playing at a higher level than Curtis Rourke. I mean, you can say, yeah, there's some who are playing as well, but there are few executing QB play in the way that Curtis Rourke is. And we saw now, most recently, their ability to respond. And so it's just week in and week out, kind of on the opposing end from what I was discussing with Oregon. Oregon's got a lot of room to grow. They, if they get to their ceiling, you can see how high they can go. But it's difficult to get a team locked in, loaded, and ready to go week in and week out to be near or even beyond the peak of the expectations for what they can achieve in the way that Curt Cignetti has the Indiana Hoosiers ready when they take the field week in and week out. That makes them remarkably dangerous every time they go out there because you're going to get the best version of Indiana when they take the field. I'm looking forward to seeing it so much that even though you're going to be in Evanston on Saturday, Mike, I'm willing to go. I'm going to call that game Saturday on the Big Ten Network.
That is a big commitment from you.
Yes,
knowing I'll be in the same zip code is not okay for you normally. It's amazing. The only thing in their way is a 2-2 Northwestern team, and if they win, they're bowl eligible.
Through 6 games. Through the first 6 games that he's been there.
Incredible turnaround, an amazing national story. The Indiana Hoosiers are. But that being said, Ross, let's not overlook another very impressive start to the season for a now ranked Illini team.
I know. You watched Illinois and what they did Saturday in Happy Valley, and it wasn't enough to win. Obviously, they didn't move the football enough offensively, but they're still dangerous. And I think they showed that. And I think they showed why, which is defense, right? It's their defense, and it kept them in the game. They've allowed, I think, 14 points a game, 17th nationally. And the D starts with the hybrid D-line linebacker, Gage Jacquets, and he's projected, NFL draft pick, and he's leads the team in sacks. It's been impressive to really watch how Aaron Henry's kind of developed this defense 2 years after Ryan Walters left for the head job at Purdue. I think when Henry took over, he was the youngest, I believe, the youngest Big Ten coordinator at the time. He's just done a good job of putting together the pieces there, and certainly what makes them dangerous is that defense, and we saw it on display there earlier in Happy Valley. Just not enough offense, Anthony, to get the job done.
They were right there on the cusp of it. And so we're seeing year 2, Aaron Henry's defense, the growth that's there. It will have the Illini in every single game when they step onto the field. And Luke Altmaier, he's one of those quarterbacks. I said, is there anyone else you can make the case might be playing near as well as what we're seeing from Curtis Rourke? Luke Altmaier and his production has been a revelation for Illinois.
And to both of your points about, they're in these games on the road against a top 10 ranked Penn State team. They're in every Penn State opponent has had a very hard time slowing down their offense. Yeah. Illinois' defense did slow down that Penn State offense, giving up only 21 points on the day. All right, a lot more football coming out throughout the course of the hour. We mentioned there were 7 ranked football teams. There are 8 ranked volleyball teams in the latest poll coming out, including number 2, number 3, back-to-back Nebraska and Penn State. You also see the Wisconsin Badgers there ranked in the top 10, along with Purdue. Why do I point out Wisconsin? Because tomorrow night you can see those Badgers taking on Rutgers on the road here on the Big Ten Network, 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central, 4:30 Pacific time. Well, she no longer has Caitlin Clark as a teammate, but she still has a nationally relevant team. What is Sydney Affolter looking forward to as basketball season's almost here? We ask her next. Plus, Anthony's going to break down his top 5 running backs in the Big Ten. I think 5. It's Anthony. So, could be 8. Might be 5. Big Ten women's basketball is almost here. Media days happen tomorrow. So it's time for our big stat presented by Gatorade. And look at this. Back-to-back 30-win seasons the last 2 years for the Iowa Hawkeyes. That is as good as anyone has done in this league since Maryland back in 2015, 16, and 17. Which brings us to our big interview. We're glad to go out to Iowa City and check in with Sydney Affolter, senior on the Iowa women's basketball team. So, Sydney, it was such a crazy long year last year for you and your team, after a crazy long year the year before. When during the summer did things finally sort of slow down and you could get perspective on everything that just went down?
I think it didn't really hit till a few weeks after the season ended. Like, the first week following the national championship game, we were all just like resting and hanging out with each other. And then a couple weeks following, we finally were like able to look back on it. And we were like, oh my gosh, that was the longest season. That was so special and such an amazing run. And we finally got to look back on it.
How did you first hear that Lisa Bluter was retiring and Jan Jansen was taking over?
We were actually all home in the summer. So it was after finals week. And we went home in May, and so no one was on campus. So we had to have a group FaceTime call, and everyone was on the call, including our athletic director, Beth Getz. And that's when Coach Bluter said she was retiring, and obviously Jan was on the call, and she was kind of smiling here and there, and she announced that she was going to take over the head coaching role, and we were all super excited for her.
I was going to say, what was the team reaction when you heard that?
Everyone was like a little bummed for Coach Bluter. I mean, I've been coached by her for 3 years, so I was sad to see her go, and she's definitely made such an impact on my basketball career, as well as just developing as a woman. And but I was so blessed to be coached by her, and I'm also so excited for Jan, and she's been awesome, and I love playing for her, so everyone was really excited.
What was the first thing you told Jan once she was officially the head coach?
Well, I first congratulated her, and I know that she definitely had opportunities elsewhere to be a head coach. So I was so blessed that she stayed here throughout the years and stuck with us. And, it's finally her turn. So more than anything, I was excited for her and, just feeling out that change for a little bit first. But she talked to me quite a bit and reassured me. And we had a lot of those conversations. So that definitely helped ease any anxiety about it. And I was so excited.
Obviously, the train is on the tracks. This program is going in the right direction. So it's not like she's going to do some crazy different things with the program overall. But she's a different person, and she's going to have some things that are different. Give me 1 or 2 examples of things that have been different so far.
Well, obviously, with just a new team in general, the learning process is a little bit slower. We have to teach our offense, our defense, all of our plays. So I think that's just been a little different for me because we've had such a veteran team for so long that everything was just like, you learn it and we're going. But it's definitely, the summer was a lot of learning, which was great. We needed that for a new team. And I think compared to Bluter, Bluter kind of yelled at us more. Jam was kind of good cop. So I think that's changing a little bit here and there. So
yeah, it's probably going to have to change, right? That makes sense. Speaking of change, you had a big jump personally this past season compared to the previous year. How come?
I think really just the confidence when I got, more minutes, I really took advantage of that. And that's something that I've been wanting so bad over the years and what I've worked so hard for. So more than anything, I don't think I was nervous or anything, but I was just like, let's go. Like, finally, this is what I've been waiting for. So just having those games with a lot more minutes gave me a lot of confidence for our postseason run.
Where do you want to improve this season?
I think obviously graduating some great upperclassmen and 3 starters, that there's a lot of opportunities left on the table, whether it's shots or rebounds or assists. So that's something that I'm definitely looking forward to. I mean, there's obviously Caitlin and Gabby. That's a lot of shots combined. So, we'll definitely have to make up for that. So I'm excited to have the ball in my hands a little bit more. And, I'm just really excited for this new team and to show what we got.
Of course, you're not going to be the only one who has the opportunity to take those shots that are gone from Kate and from Caitlin being gone. Lucy Olson, a huge transfer coming over to the Iowa Hawkeyes. So far, what have you learned about her?
She's awesome. I love playing with her. I think the first day in summer, I put us on the same team for scrimmage just because I was excited to play with her. And, she definitely exceeded all those expectations. And she definitely has a little bit different game than a lot of Big Ten guards. She loves her mid-range game, which is awesome. I love watching her pull up mid-range. So, but she's just a great teammate and such an amazing player. And I'm excited to play with her this season.
We know you have to step up. Lucy has to step up. Obviously, Hannah is going to take some of the leadership role in the scoring as well. Give me another player or two that you think we should keep an eye on this season.
I think one that you guys haven't seen yet, and she's a freshman. Her name's Tegan Mullaney. She's been playing very well in our practices recently, and she's playing a little bit of the 4 position, so I'm really excited to see what she's got, and she has a great shot. So I think she will definitely help us, and we will need her this year for sure. And I think Kylie Feuerbach, she's been playing great, and she's obviously one of my best friends, and I'm excited to see more opportunities come her way this season.
Let me get one more on last year for you now. A decade from now, when you look back on it, what's going to be the first memory from last season? The first thing that's going to pop in your head?
Oh, gosh. I mean, there's literally so many memories from last season. I think all the memories in between the games is what I'll remember forever. Like, I'm so close with those girls, and I think we'll stay best friends for a very long time, and I'll cherish that forever. But I think that obviously some big games in between, like when Caitlin hit the scoring record and then they labeled it on Carver, I think that was super awesome and super excited to see her accomplish that, and probably the LSU game and the national championship game.
Yeah, it's hard to pick just one. That was one heck of a season you guys had, and looking forward to see what you guys have in store this year. Sydney Affolter, thanks so much for your time. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Sydney and the Hawkeyes will be a part of the biggest season ever of basketball in this conference, and you can get ready for it with 2 full days of Big Ten Basketball Media Days presented by TIAA. Wednesday and Thursday beginning at 10 Eastern, 9 Central Time, 7 Pacific, only here on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. Kyle Monangai is climbing the national rankings for most rushing yards per game, but where is he in Anthony's list of best running backs in the league? Find out next. Billboard then promo. Saturday, Big Ten Tailgate is live from Northwestern. Lots on the cool new temporary stadium there, literally 50 feet from Lake Michigan. Fun begins 10 Eastern, 9 Central. Make sure you join us. All right, Anthony likes to do this thing called the Impact 5, where he takes the 5 best players at a position, unless sometimes he does many, many more
really?
than 5.
Bringing up old stuff? Bringing up old stuff? Is that what we're doing?
From last week, yeah. So this week's topic is running backs. Give me 5 through 1, the best running backs in the Big Ten Conference right now.
Lucky you, we do have 5 available on this week's list because we were able to determine who the top 5 running backs in the Big Ten are. I'm going to start at number 5 with Jonah Coleman from Washington. The versatility that he brings to the tailback position is a big part of what sets him apart from so many other talents in the country, because not only at his size is he still able and willing to run the football into the teeth of the defense, between the tackles, but he is electrifying in the open field. The way he can get out in space, we see vision, we see balance, we see an ability to make people miss, and also they love to throw him the football out of the backfield as well. So not only is Jonah Coleman a threat as a runner, but he is also a threat as a pass receiver as well. And one player I just spoke to a few minutes ago who talked about the way he's improved as a pass receiver is Nicholas Singleton of Penn State University. The combustible abilities are back for Singleton this season in this Andy Kotelnicki offense. They get him out into space. They make sure that there is green grass available. He's the type of player that can lift weights with the linemen but can sprint with the wideouts. And when you combine those assets that he has, both the power on impact and the explosive speed in space, Nicholas Singleton, you can make an argument maybe he should even be higher than number 4.
You talked to him a couple minutes ago?
Yeah.
We've been on air for 32 minutes.
Okay, a few minutes ago, perhaps.
3 minutes ago?
I mean, I talked to him earlier today. Maybe it was last week.
Singleton's been very consistent every single game this year. Very similar numbers for him. And again, he's one of 2 big backs. Speaking of a program with 2 backs, number 3 on your list.
Oh, number 3 on the list. The backfield in Columbus is one that has been a part of a lot of conversations here in recent months because of you had Travion Henderson, who was already there, and they added Quinshon Judkins into the mix. So certainly there are going to be lists that have Quinshon Judkins on them as the top 5 backs in the Big Ten, but it's hard to move off of Travion Henderson because of the way his game has expanded, has rounded into form. Not only what he does with that explosive speed, but the vision has improved, the creativity as a ball carrier is absolutely marvelous. And then what he showed as a pass blocker, to be a pass protector as a back in the Ohio State offense is something that's necessary. My number 2 back wears the deuce on his jersey, though. It is Caleb Johnson for the University of Iowa. He's got as much size as you hope, the stature at 6'2", 230 plus pounds, sprinter speed in space, and some nuanced differences in the zone blocking scheme that Iowa runs with Tim Lester in now as their offensive coordinator. But Caleb Johnson has adjusted to that at an extremely high level. He's gotten a feel for the rhythm and the timing that's necessary to hit more of the inside zone scheme, more of the verticality that's there within Iowa's run scheme right now. And there have been few backs in the country getting vertical like Caleb Johnson this season.
And those 2 running backs you just mentioned go head-to-head this week as
they do.
Iowa plays Ohio State. That leaves only one. Your number 1 running back right now in the conference is?
It's been fun to see the way Kyle Monangai has been getting appreciated by a national audience. There was a lot of expectations that maybe Monangai might make his way to the National Football League after last season when he led the Big Ten in rushing last year. He decided to return to Piscataway for another season. The elusiveness in the hole, the jump cut ability, and the force that he runs the rock with. The entire team feeds off the way that Kyle Monangai runs the football because he puts every ounce of himself into every time he touches the football. And so when you have that as sort of the fulcrum for your football team, that everyone can look to Kyle Monangai and say, if we play with that type of force, that type of ferocity on offense, defense, special teams, the special nature of this season that Rutgers has the potential to achieve will all be about the attitude that Kyle Monangai brings to the table.
Monangai's your number 1 guy among Big Ten running backs.
Couldn't resist it, huh?
3rd in the country.
Congratulations. I'm very proud of you. Hope you're proud of yourself.
Per game. Let's get Ross to join us now and rip apart your top 5. Ross, what'd you think of it?
No, I would never do such a thing. I agree with a lot of that. But there are a few players I think that deserve a mention when talking about the top 5 running backs in the league. And I think one of them is Khalil Mullings at Michigan. He's on an absolute tear. 3 straight games with at least 100 yards. 2 TDs in each of those. And again, keep in mind, this is within an offense that is really struggling to pass the ball, right? Has some quarterback issues there with Alex Orji, and they really struggle with the forward pass, Anthony. And so the group needed someone to step up, right? That offense needed someone to step up, and I think Mullings has done that. And he's a great story too, right? 5th-year senior, began his career as a linebacker. In his first ever career start last week against Minnesota. Had a career high in with 24 attempts. The other person probably deserves a mention in that top 5, Justice Ellison of Indiana. We've talked a lot about Indiana's offense, right? This is a transfer from Wake Forest. Entered Indiana with, I think, close to 2,000 yards rushing at Wake, so you knew he could do it. And he's part of an offense, right, that's 9th nationally, and it's not all that passing game, right? They're running the ball 200 yards a game. Ellison's averaging at least 4 yards a carry. I think in every game he's played, he's got 5 scores, so he can tote the rock. Big ups for Indiana's offensive line too, which has been key in this whole thing. And last but not least, Quinshon Judkins, transfer from Ole Miss to Ohio State. Anthony Travion Henderson, amazing player, and I'm glad you mentioned his pass pro and his pass blocking. The 2 Ohio State touchdowns were only because last week were only because of Henderson's pass blocking. He picked up the blitz. But let's talk a little bit about Judkins, right? Tough to tackle, an incredibly electric player in the open field, has run for already 400 yards and 173 against Marshall. Like you mentioned, maybe the best backfield in the country.
I like the fact that you mentioned Khalil Mullings. There's no doubt about that. He hasn't done it for long enough yet, so his name, flashed across my brain a little bit. But it's kind of like when Mike had the blonde frosted tips. It was like a fad. It was a short-lived thing. So I do want to see more longevity in that from Mullings before I'm willing to include him in the top 5.
It's coming back. It's coming back.
For you, for the industry at large?
Just for me.
It was a thing for a very short period of time.
Just for me, it's coming back.
Okay, looking forward to that.
Just keep watching this show every Tuesday morning. This week, 2 Big Ten teams have off weeks. Last week, 2 others did. What does Urban Meyer think about using that time off? It's not the same for every team. He'll explain right after this. The Iowa Hawkeyes are just coming off of their off week. They'll meet up with Ohio State, as we mentioned earlier in the show, number 3 in the country, playing in Columbus at the Shoe. Russ, what do the Hawkeyes need to do in this game to hang with OSU?
Well, like usual, right? They've got to play defense. They've got to, and they're good at playing defense, right? We've seen that now for years. But can they slow? Because you're not going to stop Ohio State's offensive weapons, right? They're not going to not score on you. But can you slow them a little bit here and hold them to maybe under, say, 20 points, 24 points, maybe? This does feel like the unmovable object and the unstoppable force thing, right? You've got a NASCAR type offense in Iowa, usually puts up a concrete wall of defense. So I'm excited to see how Phil Parker plans to at least slow Quinshon Judkins and Will Howard and in this Ohio State offense that just can cook so much with so many electric players.
I'm anticipating that Kirk Ferentz will likely sprinkle additional fertilizer on the field in Columbus beforehand, get that grass a little bit longer. Phil Parker grabs the football, takes a switchblade out, and just stabs it in the middle of the field. Take the air out of the ball. Then Iowa can play the game at a pace that suits them, at a tempo that will benefit the Hawkeyes. You can't just allow Ohio State's offense to just run rampant all over the place, to stay on the field as long as they might desire. So Iowa's offense, there will be a big load on Caleb Johnson. And while he's the most gifted back that Iowa has, they are deep in the backfield as well. And having a bye week allows the potential for guys like LeSean Williams and Kamari Moulton and Jazz Patterson. They can just continue to roll running backs out there into the game. And this is the healthiest that Iowa's offensive line and the most experienced that a Kirk Ferentz offensive line has been in years. And so when you've got the type of talent standing across the line of scrimmage from you like they can throw at you in Columbus, you got to make sure that not only the O-line will have responsibilities, but Luke Lachey, Addison Ostrenga, the running backs, the fullbacks, they'll have additional responsibilities in pass protection if Iowa does end up in some 3rd and long scenarios. But you got to avoid those, especially on the road, at the Shoe. You got to make sure you are picking up yardage on 1st down. But a key down will be 2nd down. Pay attention to 2nd down for the Hawkeyes. Can they get themselves into 3rd and manageable, into 3rd and short? That's where the potential will be there for aggression. the pace, the tempo of this game has to suit the Hawkeyes for them to be able to hang with the Bucks.
A couple things. I think the game's in Columbus, right?
Right?
Doesn't the shoe have turf?
I don't know.
How's Iowa going to grow that grass?
I mean, there's got to be some form of miracle grow available to you when you do it. How about a switchblade? Phil Parker got a switchblade available to
I
him.
don't
so he
think
can
that's
stab the
legally.
football. Is that against the rules?
I think it's against the rules.
I don't know that that's
We'll
accurate.
check. We'll check. Harold and research?
I'd try it.
We'll check
Phil
on that.
Parker.
By the way, you know the last time Iowa won in Columbus? 1991.
Okay.
John Cooper taking on Hayden Fry. That's how long it's been.
Yeah.
Should be a fun game to watch.
It was a good game last time. I was there a couple of years ago.
I
It
agree.
made life rough on the Bucks.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Plenty of highlights from last season for both Michigan and Washington, and it culminated with them meeting up in the national championship game. There's a few more games to get to this weekend. We're going to start with the national title game rematch. Ross, the thing is, they're two very different teams this year than we saw in January.
A lot, right? Each program is lost a ton of players. Each has virtually a whole new staff. Certainly at Washington, a new head coach. Yeah, it's two very different programs than those that we saw in the title game. For me, the matchup here is Michigan's defensive front against one of the best quarterbacks and kind of overshadowed a little bit quarterbacks in the country. In Washington, it's Will Rogers. He's throwing for about 270 a game, 10 touchdowns, 0 picks, and he faces a Michigan front that is one of the more talented in the country. We've talked about them a lot this year. That's kind of the matchup I'm watching for. On the other side of the ball, Anthony, can Michigan move the ball consistently, offensively in the pass game? Can they find something there?
And with the way they're beginning to run the rock, that bully ball aspect of what Michigan brings to the table, I'm really intrigued by that because we have seen them win Big Ten championships. And yes, J.J. McCarthy, remarkably gifted as a quarterback, as a first-round pick in the NFL draft, but they didn't have to lean on J.J. McCarthy all the time over the last couple of seasons. So now that the offensive line seems to be gelling and a run game is starting to dominate the competition, they've got a tough task this week because Washington's defense has been exceptional. Steve Belichick has really put a great defense on the field so far for the Dogs, and they, as a program, have prided themselves on that in a sort of underappreciated fashion over the years. Multiple college football playoff appearances through various regimes and things of that ilk. But for Washington to be able to stuff the run, make Michigan one-dimensional, that'll be a huge part of the task for them. And then Will Rogers, maybe just avoid Will Johnson if you can.
When possible.
Yeah,
that's
right.
a general good rule of
idea.
thumb, right? How about this? They've won every home game at Washington since 2021. That's 17 consecutive for them. Rutgers and Nebraska is so interesting, Ross, because these are two teams we actually thought at the beginning of the year they could be meeting up, both having really good starts to the season, and they both have. The only hiccup is one team has one loss, which came in overtime.
Yeah. These were like the two kind of, I think most people had them as the surprise teams in the conference to potentially challenge in the championship race. And like you said, we saw Nebraska lose at home to Illinois. Rutgers has had some tight battles, but have pulled out all their games. The black shirts got to find a way to slow who is Anthony's number one running back, right, in the Big Ten, and that's Monangai. They've got to find a way to slow him down. That to me is the biggest matchup in this game. The Rutgers D and the Rutgers running back against Nebraska's defense. They need to be successful. Monangai, I think, has 4 games of at least. 3 or 4 games of at least 100 yards. So not a lot of people have found a way to slow him down. But if you do, in that one game he didn't break 100 yards was the game against Virginia Tech. And we all saw the struggles that Rutgers had there. So that's the key. But can Nebraska's defense, and we've seen them playing really, really well, right, lately. I think Nebraska's allowed a combined 23 points in their 3 wins. So they've played really well. Can they stop Monangai? Stop Monangai, and you stop Rutgers.
And the way that Dylan Raiola began the season, he looked beyond his years. He started to look more like a true freshman, starting for the first time in major college football. Opponents start to get film on you. Greg Schiano, Joe Harris-Simiak, they're going to find every way they can to make a young quarterback as uncomfortable as they possibly can. They spent the majority of the previous game against Purdue scoreless and then began to roll late in that contest. But that'll be a bit of the cat and mouse game. How do they make a young quarterback very uncomfortable?
Scarlet Knights have never beat the Huskers. Only 6 times they've played, but 6-0 record for Nebraska. Final minute, Anthony, give me something to look forward to. USC taking on Minnesota.
The Gophers haven't been able to consistently run the football as much as they'd like, as much as we know P.J. Fleck has prided himself on over the years. It was an experienced offensive line coming into the season for the Gophers. They made a furious charge late in that game to come back and have an opportunity to win against Michigan. Weren't able to pull that one off, but if they get Darius Taylor going, if they keep Miller Moss off the field, and I was talking about making quarterbacks uncomfortable, Miller Moss has been under a lot of duress, and USC hasn't been able to run the rock in their own right as much as I was really trying to look for balance from the Trojans on offense this season, so the line of scrimmage will be huge in this game.
This will be the toughest challenge for Miller Moss. He's the best passer in the Big Ten. Minnesota, the best passing defense in the Big Ten, and they will go head-to-head against one another. That game, by the way, prime time on the Big Ten Network. For Ross and Anthony, I'm Mike. Remember, Manunga is his #1 guy.